Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Monthly Dev. And today we are kicking off our second season of the Monthly Dev. And with this new year of 2022, we have got so much content for you, and we've got so many meetups we want to do. But first, I want to share with you an exciting announcement. We have a new host for the Monthly Dev. So please welcome on stage Francesco. You probably know him from Twitter, but here he is. Hey, Francesco.
There we go. Hi, mom. Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. There we go. Well, and thank you.
Are you ready for this responsibility of hosting the Monthly Dev?
No, but I think it doesn't matter. So people are here to see me failing, so no problem. Hi, everyone. Video focus. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some blurry stuff on my camera. Sorry for this. We'll try to fix it next time. But anyway, from now on, Francesco, the stage is yours. I'll be backstage for whatever you need. So good luck with it.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. I'm Francesco from Rome, Italy, and I am the daily.dev advocate. So, today we will start the monthly dev 2022, and I have some slides here with me. I see a lot of people. Amazing. How many are? Almost 69. Nice. So, what is the monthly dev? I have these slides also for me to read them. So, daily.dev. So, the monthly dev is an online event. That's okay. It's done once per month, probably hence the name. It's free for everyone. So if you got paid, probably you have been scammed. And it also has world-class speakers. And this is very important because we like to have really top-notch speakers. So what we will talk about today, we will have three speakers of Vue.js. You have too many. Sorry, I can't click them all. Perfect. So we'll have three speakers. First of all, we'll have Ben Hong. He's amazing. I'll introduce him properly, in some minutes. We'll have some tips. Let me put me like this. Maybe it's better. 5 tips on how to can build your successful career, because starting your career in tech can be overwhelming. So this is the first one. The second one, we'll have Maya Shavin of Microsoft, and we'll see a Vue.js management store, Pinia, I think it's called, yeah. So we'll have this, and as a third one, we'll have Daniel Rowe from the Nuxt.js core team, and we'll talk about Nuxt 3 superpowers, I think. So these are the three talks of today. Thank you, Ido. You are still in the chat. Perfect. I don't know what you are saying today. Okay, so before we start, let me put this here. Before we start, please help us, especially me, since I'm the new host, and like this video. You can even join the meetup group. We are close to 5,000 members. We are very, very close. So, okay, my introduction is done. Yeah, thank you for... the meetings will last for about 20 to 40 minutes. What's the structure? We'll invite the guests one by one. We will let them speak. And at the end of each talk, we will have a Q&A session. And in the meanwhile, I'll be in the chat. I'll try to answer and collecting the questions. So you can ask whatever you want, or we will focus on answering to the questions at the end of each talk. Okay? Are you ready? Perfect. Let's go. Okay. I think we can start with Ben Hong. Let me invite him. Let me make... Okay, perfect. So Ben Hong, probably most of you already know him. He's in the Vue.js core team, senior developer at Netlify, and I think this topic is very important. So we'll have 5 tips on how to build a successful career in tech. How are you, Ben? You are the first guest of my first episode, and I'm really happy to have you here as the first one.
Yeah, honored to be here and happy to speak with you all.
Perfect, perfect. So, can you give a little sneak peek to convince us to watch this talk, and then I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, as you mentioned, I really kind of wanted to talk. I mean, obviously, this is a Vue sort of themed talk, so there'll be certainly things to talk about Vue. But I thought we'd talk about some of the things that I've learned in my career, as well as things I've seen in the community, as far as helping to build yourself a successful career. And we'll talk about the meanings of that, and more importantly, because the Vue is really about community and helping everyone thrive. And basically, we want people to survive long term and not deal with burnout and stuff. So I think this is a topic that's important, and I'd love to talk about with y'all.
Perfect, Ben. If you want, you can start sharing your screen.
Okay,
and soon
perfect.
I'll let you start. Your voice is
Yep.
pretty clear. Glad to hear you. Perfect. Thank you.
Sounds
Ben,
good.
Ben
Audio's
Hype.
great.
Perfect. Okay,
All right.
so let
Well,
me find. Okay, do you like this? I think this is nice.
okay,
So
yeah, I think this is good.
I don't think you need the good luck, but I'll say this anyway. Ben, yeah, bye bye. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's kick it off, shall we? So as mentioned, the talk here today is 5 tips for building a successful career in tech. And the title is a little bit cheeky as we'll go through, but I figure let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Whoop, there we go. Let me get the focus right. Excellent. All right, so a little fun fact about me is that I really love going to amusement parks. And so this is from the Orlando Universal Studios River Adventure Park. As you can see here, if you're trying to look for me in this photo, I'm at the very top with both of my arms up, having the time of my life as I drop, I think it was like 80 foot down like a water ride. Absolutely a ton of fun. And gosh, do I miss amusement parks. But don't worry if you're thinking, wait, Ben, when have you had time to go to amusement parks? This was taken way back in 2017. I know that certainly different protocols are in place right now for, crowded spaces, but certainly miss them and look forward to a time where it's going to be safer to get back. So yeah. Okay. So I know y'all have a little bit of a brief introduction about me, but I thought we'd go ahead and say, as far as to cover the things I'm currently doing. So as mentioned, so I'm a senior staff developer experience engineer at Netlify. And if you don't know what developer experience engineer is, right? Because normally you're used to probably front end, back end, full stack. Basically, the way I like to put it is if you have like a developer job with a developer advocate job where you sort of like interact with the community and you create content to talk about a product. And then you also like put a UX designer position. You take all 3 of those and you like have them make a baby. That's basically what developer experience is. It borrows from a lot of different disciplines, and honestly, there's a whole talk in that in and of itself. But that's what DX is, in case for those who are new to that title, because it's a rather sort of a new emerging field that's starting to gain a lot more traction within companies. And then also, I'm on the Vue.js core team. A lot of my work centers primarily around docs and community work. And so I'm also a Nuxt ambassador, Vue mastery instructor, and Google developer expert. And so that's a mouthful, right? And so when we're talking about careers in tech, clearly there's a lot that I do with open source, because for those that don't know, a lot of the Vue team that's actually working on the core team is actually volunteer based. We're spread out across the world, and it makes for a really interesting working environment. But anyways, we'll get into that in a bit. But all that to say, though, is that the question here is, what does success mean to you? And that's what I was referring to earlier a little bit about the whole title talk being a little tongue-in-cheek, is that success in tech and in your career is something that's a tricky concept to answer, right? For a lot of us, what are we probably thinking? Well, probably a lot of us were motivated to join because of financial reasons. And as a lot of the community has tried to state over the time, like there's nothing wrong with money being a big motivator for joining tech. And so maybe it's like, developing a certain financial status, but then maybe it's about, for example, for some of you, being able to speak at a big conference, right? Getting on stage and in front of 400, 600 people and getting to talk about something. Or maybe it's about joining a prestigious company, right? I know earlier on in my career, like my big thing was like, I got to join one of the big tech companies. Like once I get a Google, a Apple, a big company on my resume, like I'm going to be like, I am a certified engineer and I no longer need to have imposter syndrome. Or, for others too, maybe it's about fame and they think that like, oh, it's about being really popular and having a lot of followers. Or for other people, it's about like building the next app that will impact millions of lives, right? And so, as you can see, like this is a tricky thing, right? Because it means so many different things. And the question is like, if the metric is constantly being moved or sort of have so many different avenues to it, how exactly can we go ahead and ensure that we can optimize to ensure that we create a meaningful career in tech that is, well, meaningful to you? So First thing first, this is beautiful artwork that I found. And I think a lot of times when we start out in tech, and as you're growing in your tech career, we start out very open to new ideas, right? Because after all, we're new to the industry. So in other words, we're building with new frameworks, we're learning about different ideas, and we're just like ingesting all these ideas. But some point along the line, I feel like a lot of developers, engineers end up in this position. And so what we see here, in case actually you can't see the image, is you have an ostrich which is headed in the ground. And that in the sense that like I found that it's very common for people in tech to eventually become indoctrinated with the tools that they started, like basically they've like either got their jobs with or whatever, and they stop learning new ideas and they kind of get in this one way of doing things. And so the problem with this though is that as a result, you kind of basically you close off your ability to grow as an individual, because now you've basically got whether it's framework lock-in or tool lock-in. And so for example, as a Vue core team member, you might probably be inclined to think, well, maybe Ben only does Vue or has done Vue all his life, but actually that's quite the contrary, right? Throughout my career, I've done jQuery, I did Angular, a little bit of Backbone, and then for actually a good chunk of my career, I was doing React stuff. Building with React Native and that kind of thing. And it was upon learning about different ideas of implementation and doing basically new paradigms that I kind of was introduced to Vue. And for me, what I fell in love with was sort of like Vue's level of abstraction while still giving you access to primitives. And so by allowing to sort of explore different ideas, that's kind of what got me to Vue. But then more importantly, even as a Vue core team member now, I still always look at new frameworks and see what other people are doing, because this is how you gain new ideas and how you can grow and iterate as an individual. And so in the Vue community, I think a great example of this is that, for example, a lot of you, if you've been following sort of the CSS sort of discussions over time, is CSS in JavaScript has become very, very popular, right? Because one of the things they keep trying to solve is like, why don't we go ahead and just find a way to make CSS stuff dynamic? And well, we have JavaScript anyway, so let's do that. And so in Vue 3, I think this is an example of the framework investing in ideas rather than mere tools, right? Rather than being like, we're a JavaScript framework, so everything should be done in JavaScript. One of my favorite features here in Vue 3 that I want to demo here real quick is dynamic CSS variables. So here we have a basic hello world that we've been scaffolded from Vite. And as you can see here, nothing very complicated. There's a counter here that lets you increment, which is basically tracked here with a reactive reference. And so if this is a new syntax to you, this is basically composition API. And just know that this is a reactive data here, count. That's really, for now, all you need to know. And so what do we do here, right? Typically, if you wanted to, let's say we wanted to change the title of this H1, and we wanted to go ahead and toggle its color, right? Typically, what you're probably thinking of is like, okay, well, we can create some dynamic classes, right? To be like, oh, okay, well, we'll bind a class and we'll say, hey, in this dynamic class, we'll say if the count is even, then we'll give it a class of is blue. And then otherwise, we'll give it a class of is green, right? And so the problem, though, with this is that we end up in oh, wait, hold up. I messed up the syntax. 0 here. Okay. The problem with this, though, is that we end up in a sort of constricted way of styling things, because let's face it, if you wanted to give someone infinite ways of choosing color, all of a sudden you got a big problem, because there's no way you can create that many CSS classes, because you'll just get CSS bloat. And so rather than trying to use JavaScript to like hack your way into like inlining things and that kind of stuff, what if we could use what CSS does well already on its own, and then do that basically with while still leveraging the power of JavaScript, right? What would a perfect marriage like that be? Well, one way we could do that is we could say, let's say that we wanted to actually track a reactive color, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an input element here, type color. And so you can see here, this is an HTML built-in element that lets you do a color picker, which is really nice. And what we can do here is we can assign it to like chosen color, right? This is the color that the user is going to choose. And so here I can attach this via a V model to the chosen color. And to show you this work, we're going to go ahead and just we're going to remove the message here and just print out the chosen color, just like that. And so now you can see here, when I'm going ahead and selecting the color, we can see that it's actually dynamically being updated. Now, what if we wanted the color to reflect that? Well, with the new Vue 3 basically ability to bind styles dynamically, we can come in here and say, hey, for this H1, actually, let me not remove that one. For this H1, what we can do is we can say, what we really want is the color to be dynamic. And what do we want it to watch? Well, we're actually really interested in this chosen color JavaScript value that Vue is doing very good job handling for us. And so what we want to do then is we want to ideally bind it. And so what if we did like a vbind on chosen color? And so once we have that, you're going to notice, of course, the moment. Let me do something real quick. React it. There you go. There we go. Okay. Live demos are always a little tricky. Okay, so what you'll see here is that the text color is changing to whatever we decide it to be. And you basically have like the full color spectrum accessible to you. And you're probably wondering like, Ben, how does this work? That looks like magic. Well, it's not, right? Vue has given you just enough abstraction so that what's really happening underneath the hood is that Vue is generating a dynamic CSS variable so that you can see here it has like a little hash, chosen color. And so now when you go through, you can go ahead and update things, and then all this stuff gets shared across. And this is what I was talking about regarding like investing in ideas rather than tooling, right? Because when you bottleneck yourself into this idea of like, oh, well, we're doing everything JavaScript, everything should be JavaScript. Like the idea here is to leverage what exists and to do it in such a way that it's intuitive for people so that they're not managing CSS in line in their HTML or trying to do it in their JavaScript. If you're managing CSS, where should it be? It should be in your styles. Like this is a well-known concept. Let's build on that. And so this here, this concept, again, a small feature, but yet I think it'll unlock for a lot of people, unlock a lot of potential for people, because now you have the ability to really just, you can imagine personalization and stuff takes on a whole new meaning because it's that much easier to manage because you can do your JavaScript stuff and then the CSS just works. You don't need to worry about creating a bunch of CSS classes or whatnot. Anyhow, all right. So suffice to say, that's like a little demo of that. The very first tip is in this concept of investing in your ideas, not your tools. So for example, if for whatever reason, one day Vue as a framework becomes sunset, like there are going to be new tools. And so as a result, if we invest in our ideas, we can constantly grow and keep learning. Now, the next piece of this is about, let's take a look at this, right? For those who, I know that for those who've started a job during remote, this might not be as visceral for you as some, but for those of us who have worked in the office, this is a nightmare for a lot of us. This is the cubicle setting, right? For those who might not be able to see the image. In that, a lot of times when you do work in tech, and working for companies, we have this sort of traditional idea that we are paid to basically be this pigeonholed role inside the community. And more importantly, we're trained to think that we have to work these designated number of hours, right? And what I want to challenge here is this idea that your value to the companies that you work for is not in the time that you sit inside in the seat, right? And there are some exceptions to this, right? Like if you're in customer support and you need to like be online from X hour to X hour, this is a clear exception to this. But in general, your value is not about just being there in your seat, but instead like what you create and the solutions you help to design. And so as a result, one of the things like I want to, I don't know why this keeps moving. Okay, there we go. When working for a company, right? I feel like a lot of times we find ourselves in a position where we're trapped in, like, I love this graphic here where you just have like the person who's like, the suit and tie, but then this other person who's walking out is kind of what I would say is like the company, right? The company is doing whatever it wants with the products that you make, and you're basically at their beck and call. And the reason I want to challenge this is because your tech career is something you take with you, right? The stuff you build for the company, that's great and all. But if the company isn't challenging you to grow, this is coming at your expense, right? If the company is overtaxing you or creating some sort of toxic environment, this is also coming at the expense of your future. Why? Because this means you are at the risk of burnout. And when we're talking about a successful career in tech, one of the things that's important to me in seeing, at least when I define a successful career in tech, is longevity. The ability to decide when and where you decide to, let's say you only want to do tech for 10 years, and that's fine. But if you burn out in the first 2 because of these elements, this is bad. And so this is why tip number 2 is revolved around the idea of investing in yourself first. and the community around you, right? And the company is secondary. And I know this might seem a bit contrarian at first, but if you honestly think about it, like when you're able to invest in the things you care about and learn about the things that matter to you, the company ultimately benefits. Why? Because this means that you bring an authentic side to yourself and enthusiasm that they end up reaping as side benefits from. And so an example of this we see is Google at one point implemented this ratio where they always gave, I think, 20% of the time back to the employee to learn and do whatever they want, because that ability to inspire and create and just learn from different places usually end up basically paying dividends back to the company. And so a lot of times I find that when starting the jobs, we find ourselves just trying to at the beck and call of the company, but then at the expense of ourselves. And I'm sure you can talk to a lot of different developers where they might have been at a company for 2-3 years, but if you ask them if they did anything significant, they've been like, I approved some PRs. I think I made a change to that one widget on the page. Like, I don't know, that to me, that would be very frustrating, because you spend all this time only to have really little to show. And more importantly, like when you're moving on to your next role, you're going to feel like you're behind. And so in addition, when it comes to community, the reason why I highlight community in this as well is because community is something that you can bring with you regardless of where you are in your job. And more importantly, it has an incredible long-term return on investment as far as the people that, because your community, as they move different jobs, you still have them. But if you invest entirely inside of the company workplace culture, once you leave, that network is gone. And so one of the interesting things about networking at a high level is that your network and the value that you provide to yourself in the community is often more valuable the more you have disparate sort of nodes of interaction. So in other words, it's more useful to have other people spread out at different companies because you can learn different things. And more importantly, you have insight into various perspectives, as opposed to investing everything in like the one company. Then you're sort of bound. And this is actually back to the first tip regarding investing in ideas and not tools. Well, you don't want that sort of lock-in when it comes to that sort of idea. So anyhow, there's lots of different ways to do this. But again, I only have so much time for today. So at a high level, this is something I want to basically challenge you to think about, in that whether it's bringing yourself to learn in public or to even do a little bit of like whether it's blogging and sharing your ideas, you'll find that when you invest in yourself, that is something that will pay off in long-term dividends in ways that you might not realize just yet. But again, can't recommend it enough. Okay. So if this were a normal room, I'd ask everyone to raise their hands to say, how many of you have heard the dry principle or YAGNI? And I imagine a good chunk of you would probably raise your hands. And for those that don't know what that means, the dry principle is something that is often touted early on in coding boot camps, that kind of stuff, or just in general, which is like, do not repeat yourself, right? Or don't repeat yourself. And then YAGNI is you ain't gonna need it, right? And these principles are often spouted, and people find themselves in a position where they find themselves sort of trying to adhere to them religiously, because they're like, oh, I can't repeat myself, right? If I have code in 2 different places in the code base, this makes me a bad developer. And what I want to challenge here is this idea that that's not the case. And so there's this great quote by Dr. Brene Brown, which is where she says, learning and acquiring experience requires focus, but unlearning and relearning requires much more, and it often requires choosing courage over comfort. And the reason I bring up the principles earlier is because I think a lot of times, especially when we're starting out with something new, we rely on these principles and guidelines as a way to just sort of reassure ourselves that we're doing the right thing. But oftentimes over time, what I've seen is that eventually you lose the flexibility to realize how to make decisions within context. And when we choose comfort over the ability to choose like contextual variables, we find ourselves often in a position where we're making either inefficient decisions or frankly incorrect decisions. In that, you know, this is why like you hear in programming, right? One of the quips is pre-optimization is the root of all evil, is because those that try to adhere very strongly to do not repeat yourself will find themselves abstracting too early and end up creating problems later on, when it's okay if the code repeats itself like 2 or 3 times. And then later on, when you feel like you actually have the data to support the refactoring, then you might want to abstract it. But when we have the rote following of different ideas, this becomes problematic. And so this was a quote from Brene Brown, who was commenting on this book that I honestly highly recommend. Like for 2021, if someone were to ask me, what's the one book you should read? It's this book. It's Think Again by Adam Grant. And it is around this idea of making sure that you spend the time to learn that the concepts you have before, it's important to update them and be able to basically unlearn those things and adapt new principles rather than constantly working with outdated data. And so basically what I'm saying here in tip number before I move on to that. And so a good example of this in the Vue community here is, I would say, the options API versus the composition API. And so for those that didn't follow this transition, this was a fairly big deal back in the day when we were sort of going from Vue 2 to Vue 3, because most of people knew Vue with the options API. And so just to show you real quick, for those, the options API basically was taking this code, and you probably more recognize it along like this. So default data, and then like this, right? This is like what people were used to. And so when we proposed the alternative here, which was this got at one point was rather controversial, because there was this feeling of like splitness of like, wait, this is something that's totally different, right? Like what's going to happen? And so one of the things I love about the Vue community is that we try our best to constantly strike a balance between the abstractions and the primitives. So in other words, right, we know that when it comes to working with these various ideas like options, right? Options is something everyone was comfortable with. And yet we know that there were people looking to architect things in different ways. So how could we do it in a way that gave people the flexibility to say, hey, I want to do things in a more like sort of vanilla JavaScript type style where I declare my utilities, I control everything. How can I do that? Versus options, which has a bit more of a framework regarding how you define things. And so I think and that's why we have the handshake emoji here, because what I want to emphasize here is that they coexist. It's not one or the other. And more importantly, over time, yes, you will probably have a preference in style. Your team may have preferred things, and they complement each other in various ways. But the point is, you can choose what works best for you. And this is an example of this principle of learning to unlearn, right? Because if Vue was just like, no, options API is the only thing we're sticking with, everyone loves it, millions of people have proven we can build scalable apps with it, composition API would have never come into play. But because we're willing to challenge those ideas and say, is it really necessary for it to be the only way? Can we adapt new principles? This is one of the ways that composition API was basically came into the community. And so learning how to unlearn, again, it sounds like such a simple concept, but if you examine your own behavior, in fact, a lot of the people around you, you'd be surprised to see how many people keep working with outdated information and are often afraid of change. And so that's why I really like Brené's phrasing there of choosing courage over comfort, because that's what it takes to challenge something that you've grown used to. Okay, so here we have a comic strip, right, from Cloud Pleasers, and it's basically kind of like doing like someone's doing a whiteboarding exercise, and the interviewer is saying, we want our interviews to be able to solve real-world problems, so while you balance this binary search tree, I'll be changing the requirements, imposing arbitrary deadlines, and auditing you for regulatory compliance. And so this here is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because it's about what I want to get at here is that it's one thing to solve code problems, but actually a lot of times what you'll find is on your job, people problems are actually much more complicated than code. And so here, for those that haven't watched the show, this is from The Good Place, and there's a fantastic quote, so don't worry, no spoilers here. And what here you have Michael talking to Chidi, which is the character you see on the screenshot. And the thing about this is that he says here, oftentimes when you think about it, actually this is a little bit related to the past. It says having someone like these sort of events, they're a rare occurrence, like a double rainbow or someone on the internet saying, you know what, you've convinced me I'm wrong. And so the reason this connects from the last one as far as learning to unlearn is because being able to admit you're wrong, and more importantly, is a key part in working with other people on the team. And so here, what we find is that empathy is a really, really key skill for not only just your career in tech, but just in life in general. Because what you want to do is to be able to understand the people that you're working with and the problems that you're trying to solve. And oftentimes when we fail to have this, this is where we get a lot of problems inside of whether the code that we build or the solutions that we design, because we fail to understand the problem to begin with. And so my fourth tip here is to invest in your ability to empathize and to communicate with your users. And so the Vue team, for example, are often we're very typically on the ground interacting with users on the daily, and we encourage feedback, whether it's on docs and that kind of stuff, because we want to see what's going on with people and then how are they using it so that we can keep improving on the solutions that we're providing for the community. Finally, there's this phrase that's often talked about in the career where this idea of being paid what you're worth. And getting paid what you're worth to me is a seemingly innocent phrase, but has unfortunately an inherently toxic undertone, because it means that it emphasizes this idea that your worth is defined to how much money you're paid. And as someone who's seen the gamut of career salaries within tech, if you're merely if you're defining how much you're paid as your worth, it's kind of a never-ending battle, and you're basically, I would say, doomed for unhappiness, because there's always there tends to be companies that are paying outrageous salaries for outrageous things, but that is not your worth. And so this image here, which is kind of a meta of like a water droplet of someone in the background, like, I think what's really important here, as you're going through your tech career, is reflecting on what's important to you. Because when you let other people in the community define your worth by, oh, you're not using the coolest framework or what they perceive to be the coolest framework, again, what you're being paid, what your title is, when those things are being used to define your worth, you find yourself being pulled in so many different directions. And I find that this is one of the reasons people burn out. And so this is a tricky thing. I can't tell you what's important to you. But what I can say is that oftentimes it revolves around aligning the work you're doing in a way that aligns with your values. But also, when you define impact that you want to create in the community, that is the kind of stuff that oftentimes can drive you in ways way past those sort of arbitrary metrics that people are like, how colorful is your GitHub graph and all those different things, right? That's not what's important. And ironically, and this is the funny thing about when you can actually define what's important to you and pursue that wholeheartedly, you'll find that those other things actually kind of come naturally as a side effect. Because what people don't realize, I think, in the day and age where digital, we're talking about like people doing deep fakes and all this stuff, like authenticity is an incredibly precious currency at this point. And being able to be authentic to yourself, that just has leaps and bounds of rewards when it comes to not only your career, but your life in general. And so to wrap things up, final thoughts. We started off this talk asking you what success means to you. And so if you haven't gotten it at this point, what I'm trying to tell you here is that the only person who can really define what success means in your tech career is you. And spending the time to figure that out, that is really key. In addition, as far as additional themes, just remember, like I would say, as far as the tech career goes, having resilience, as far as resilience to burnout and that kind of stuff, again, avoid chasing those tools. And when you identify with the ideas and values that resonate with you, that is ultimately what helps to build that resilience. And when you can find that alignment, it's just, I can tell you, it's absolutely magical. So as far as, sort of final thoughts for wrapping up, if you're looking for me on the Internet of Things and just want to, check out resources that I built, you can check out my website at www.benkozen.io. And so as my farewell thoughts, again, thank you everyone for listening to the talk today. You can find me on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, do live streaming video content. But as my final thought, if you really are going to remember one thing from this talk, it's that, again, like, I'm really happy that you're here in the community, and that while there are a lot of things that are really great about it, you're going to encounter things that are tricky about it as well, right? You're going to see things that may not align with you. But if you're rooted in the values that matter to you and have a community that supports you in the things that matter to you, I think this is really the best chance for you to help you grow and thrive. So with that wraps up my talk.
Okay. Ben, this was really amazing. I got goosebumps at the end of the talk. So it's really amazing, especially the final part I really loved this. Thank you so much, because this I think it was the best way to start this sort of events. So yeah, I think that you dropped a lot of things, insightful things, also a mix of funny and powerful things. I really loved this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we are also inspiring in the backstage. Inspired in the backstage. So perfect. So. Okay, so since we have other two people waiting, I'll go fast. We have some questions, if you can answer to some
absolutely.
of them. Yeah, and thank you again. How can you can a self-taught developer, I think in general, find some way to the enter points? Because I think it's most of the times the problem is really to step in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's really the problem there.
Mm-hmm. So actually, I didn't even for time constraints. So fun fact about myself. So I don't have a comp sci background, and so my background is in psychology. And I sort of entered the tech world actually prior to really boot camps being a thing and meetups and that kind of stuff. And so I completely empathize with this question regarding being self-taught and how you enter the tech field. And so I think one of the new challenges of what I think new developers are encountering is that at this point, you have a lot of people, investing in boot camps, and a lot of people have the same portfolio. They've done the same thing. And so how do you distinguish yourself from one another when everyone seems to be doing the same thing? And so whether it's self-taught or boot camp, I actually would say this advice goes across both, is that in terms of like entering the field, the tricky part when you're looking at both sides of the hiring process and getting hired is that for the person who's doing the hiring, they're looking for a way to find out people who stand out, right? And then as a person who are trying to get hired, you're trying to figure out, how do I stand out? And this is what I was trying to communicate a little bit in this talk, is that your most unique asset as far as being able to stand out is actually you as an individual. In other words, the ideas that you have, the background that you have, the perspective that you've came to grow in, that is what you want to like train yourself to bring to the table. And so this is why I was saying, whether it's learning in public, sharing your ideas, or more importantly, building ideas that resonate with you, that is how you ensure that you're not just building another to-do MVC clone, that you're not just building another counter app. Is that because when you have personality, this is what people are looking for. And I think this is particularly highlighted in the pandemic, where we're looking for connection. And I found that especially when you can get people to see that authenticity and connect with you as a person, people have they kind of let their guards down as far as the hiring process, from what I've seen. Because to be honest, let's face it, everyone can basically learn anything on the job, right? Especially once you have the foundation, like you can be taught those skills. But what is hard to teach and what's hard to find is being someone who's people enjoy working with. And so the way you can make that stand out more, to be like, I would love to work with this person, that is going to carry you much farther than just simply having the latest buzzwords on your resume. So hopefully I kind of ranted a little bit, but hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, let me say super fast that I come from the sport world, so totally different backgrounds, but we are trying to bring our knowledge from different skills into tech in some ways. So I find this is kind of similar also for me. Let's try to go fast, just 5 more minutes, then I have to
sounds good.
Someone else. Sorry, but I would really listen to you for literally hours or maybe days. My name is Jennifer, I'm a junior developer. With all the experience that you got, isn't it a bit hard to learn new stuff without mixing all the knowledges and get lost?
That's a great question. So in terms of learning new things, the most important thing I would say when it comes to learning new things is having a problem to apply it to. So otherwise, there's kind of a lack of stickiness. And more importantly, what I've actually, in my experience, even though I've jumped so many different frameworks and different tools, this is why I was saying you invest in ideas and not tools, is that the good ones you'll see transfer throughout the frameworks. And then you actually start to see some of the friction when they do things kind of weird, and you'll be like, why are they doing it that way? And when you can learn if it's a good idea, you can bring those back into the ecosystems you care about. Or more importantly, if it's not a good pattern, then you can leave that behind. And so believe it or not, it's actually, once you get in the hang of like focusing on the ideas, you won't get lost in specific techniques and tooling. So hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you. I see a lot of people. I don't think that I can click them all. Maybe the very last question. I think it's a bit long,
sure.
but let's try. I'll give you 2 more minutes. What are the things to be taken care when migrating a code base from Vue 2 to Vue 3? Maybe this is a hard one to reply in 1 minute. Or maybe you can. If there is one person, you are the only one.
I can do this quickly. For migrating a code base from Vue 2 to Vue 3, basically, we wrote a whole migration guide on the docs site. So basically, I'd recommend checking that out. There are some breaking changes you need to watch out for, but otherwise, hopefully, we tried to make it as smooth of a process as possible. So check that out if you have additional questions. And this goes for everyone. Just reach out to me. My DMs are open on Twitter. I'm happy to chat with you all more.
Perfect, Ben. This was a really great way to start this monthly dev 2022. Also, this was, let's say, my first talk as a host. Thank you so much. So bye, Ben. Okay, let's invite. Bye. So let's invite the second speaker. Hey, Maya, how are you?
Well, I was fine until I listened to Ben talk.
Okay, are you ready to go? Are you ready to go after Ben?
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm not ready to go after Ben. He did such a good job, but yeah.
Okay, so please do this for me since I am the host. This is my first time. Okay,
no worry.
So I checked a bit Maya. Maya, she's a senior software engineer at Microsoft. He's also a writer, a blogger, a speaker. She has been featured in Women in STEM. And I've seen some yoga videos on her YouTube channel, but we are not here for this, maybe. But if you dig, you will find those. So Maya, please introduce yourself a little bit, and then also about this talk. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Let me find this. No. Let introduce yourself, and then I'll let you talk. Just a bit.
Okay. Well, Francisco, thanks for introductions, and yep. So I'm technically I'm a software engineer. And I mean, I'm kind of mixing up language right now. Okay, so first of all, I'm hungry, and second of all, Ben is doing such a great job. So now I'm really, really dying for pizza. Anyway, I'm Maya. Hi, and I'm a senior software engineer in Microsoft. Yeah, like Francesco said, almost everything I like to check out all the new stuff about front end, and I don't really stick to anything so much. I like Vue, just so you know, but I'm working with React in my daily jobs in Microsoft and other companies. And I also a book author, blogger, anything. You can find me on Twitter and everything. And I also do like yoga, which I do it once every 4 years or so.
Okay.
But yeah.
Amazing, Maya. Okay, so let's get started. I've heard that you like pineapple on pizza, and I'm Italian, so maybe it's better to talk about a different topic.
I chose the wrong topic. Now my stomach is actually growing.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay,
but
Maya,
anyway.
okay, so perfect. I think we are set. So you can start with your talk as usual. Leave the question in chat, and yes, we can start. We can get started. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Francisco. So again, we're going to talk about Pinia. Well, technically, it's a yummy store management, which honestly, my stomach is really dying for a pineapple pizza right now. And I know it's not a real pizza, but it doesn't really matter. It's cute. So today we're going to talk about how I'm going to check out Pinia. I never checked out Pinia before until today. So there's a lot of things I wouldn't know. It's a lot of things that you probably know better than me. But bear with me. It's a very short talk. Okay, like I did a little bit of introduction, so nothing much to say here except I also am an author for front-end development projects with Vue.js, and I'm also an illustrator with cute stuff. So you can see here, I like to draw stuff in my free time, and I make stickers, so on. And I'm also a core team member of Storefront UI, which is the e-commerce component library, and I'm also an organizer of Vue.js Israel. Yeah, just like then my title go longer, which I'm a GD, Nuxt ambassador, media developer expert, and so on. In general, in short, I'm just a front-end engineer, which I like to talk about anything related to front-end and web development. And yeah, so that's about me. So before we dive into Pinia, so let's talk a bit about what is state management. Let's do a bit of recap. Why do you need state management and when? So by definition, state management is the process of maintaining knowledge of an application's inputs. By inputs, it means anything that can relate to data, the data flows that share across multiple related data flows, so that the application can understand or the user can understand the condition of an app or component at a given time. Yeah, it's not very theoretically, but in general, let's say you have an input, a form and input. The input has different state. This is also kind of, you manage the state of the input is also state management. It can be an error, it can be validate, it can be inside a form, and the form can manage its own state also, or it just simply a store, a pizza store, my stomach, and a store that display only data, which is gallery of pizza, and it's maintain the data in this gallery. It allows users to interact with it, and the state of this page, meaning which pizza is selected, which pizza is added, and so on, or simply just a loading state, an error state, anything that user will see, and we change the application condition as a sections period. So in short, state management is how we manage the condition of an app, a component, a features at a given section period. Anything related to data flow, it helps us to keep consistency between the flow of between components and features and applications. It can be a flow between an front end to the back end, or just between any front end components. So when do you need state management? Honestly, you don't need state management. Most of the case, you don't need state management. You can just do a normal just a normal store, or you don't even need state management in a simple website, for example. So you only need state management if you need to share states or data flow between components. If not, then you just use local state. Well, it kind of state management is still. We're talking about state management libraries here. Or you want to preserve data logic from component lifecycle, which means the data will still live even though the component lifecycle has end, which means if component recreate, it does not need to recreate the data. It actually can only take the data at a certain conditions and continue on from that moment. And this way, we can separate between data management or state management and component management. And by having a state management, you have a single source of truth. So when you need a single source of truth across the applications to be able to know, to be able to debug, to be able to test, to be able to share between applications, this is when you need state management. And because you have state management, you have faster UI interaction, you don't need to send a lot of requests to backend. Think about you need to query a page, query a list of pizzas every time when you go back to the gallery. It will be a little bit too much for the front end to handle, so for the user to see, because then they keep seeing that loading state somehow. And you keep on the state that can be kept in the front end, in the applications, and let user handle interaction with user. And when it needed, it will send the request to the backend. This is how it should. This is how state management should be. And by having a single source of truth, it means that you have better maintenance and testing. And you want to have good maintenance when your code base grows large and complex, you should think about state management, or else don't bother. So some of the state management libraries that out there we have. One of them are Vuex. The other one can be like Redux, Morphic. What's the other one? Replay, I think. But the other one mainly for for React. Vuex, in the other hand, is solely a super for the Vue community. We all love it. It's been there since the beginning. I honestly cannot think of me starting a new project without Vuex. Like, I don't even talk about Redux. Anyway, so Vuex is using the Flux architecture inspired, which means it had dispatch, it had actions, it had store and a view. So dispatchers is actually the central hub on this flow, one-way flow, or we can call it unidirectional data flow. And we're not discussing about it so deeply in the scope of this talk. Anyway, so Vuex have been there, very strong community. They're doing a very great job in maintaining their library, and it's very good for scalability and for complex projects. However, it's a little bit overkill for many cases, especially when you start a small and medium project. And Typescript is not exactly there yet. I mean, it kind of have Typescript support now, I think. I haven't checked out the latest Vuex yet, but it's not that straightforward. It have a fictive code splitting for store. Sorry, one moment. So it have a effective, well, Vuex doesn't have an effective code splitting for store at all. Well, maybe now the next Vuex will be probably better. So that's why we have Pinia. And Pinia is the modular approach to store management. It's actually the new approach that kind of dividing your store into several modulars. So what's cool about Pinia? Well, first of all, it's a very cute pineapple. So if you see that pineapple, cutie thing there, it make you really want to grab it and try it. So what yummy about Pinia? First of all, it supports both Vue 2 and Vue 3 out of the box. It has TypeScript support. Well, it's brand new. It's like about 2 years and 3 years, I think. So it should be, well, when you start from scratch, you have the ability of doing anything you want. So TypeScript is obviously a must here. And it's create and bundle the store only where it needed. So it, let's say if I have a gallery, I only need to get the store where of pizza. Instead of, I don't need the store of cart, or I don't need the store of user. So this way you can bundle exactly what you need in this component in the bundle to serve the client. So it saves a lot of time in loading also. And with plugins, which we're going to cover a bit later in the demo, it helps you to reuse Getter, which in Vuex I think is a bit harder. So now you can organize your code and have less duplicate, and it's lighter. So that's the yummy thing, and that made me want to have a pineapple pizza right now. I really want it. Anyway, seeing it, believe it. So I can talk until tomorrow about anything cool about Pinia or anything I heard about Pinia, but as long as I haven't tried it and we haven't seen it together, we won't be able to believe that it's that good. So let's do a small demo. For the sake of this demo, we're going to use Vue 3, Vue Router 4, Pinia 2, Netlify function, and Vue.js as the bundle management. Why? Because it's fast and it's cool. Anyway, so what is our target for our demo? We're going to create a store for fetching, storing, and display pizza from the backend API using Netlify functions. We're going to create a cart system that allows us to add, edit, remove, and clear the cart. We're going to have to add the pizza to cart and then display the cart with the updated information. And we're going to make the payment using, we're going to add the functionality to make a payment using Pinia plugin. Okay, let's go. So this is the code. I hope you can all see it. I can see that it's not really big enough. Hopefully it's big enough. Anyway, for the sake of the demo, I already installed everything. So I also went ahead and add Pinia by adding an index.js store, and then in main I just add the Pinia, use Pinia, and create app. Nothing that too complex here. And now in the pizza, I have just a component that display the pizza image, name, description, and price, and a button to add item to the cart. So the pizza gallery, and we have only the dummy information. And so let's go ahead and create a store. So I'm going to create a store called use pizza store.js, which I'm going to do use pizza store. Oh, thank you, Copilot. But again, I cannot use it until I do like this. Yeah. And let's see, pizza, of course, you need an ID, we need a state, we need an item, and we need the loading, and we need an arrow. Yep. Basically, Copilot is helping me a lot. And let's see what we have. And we're going to create an image that we serve the image, just complete. Bear with me. This is just to make sure that I have the image optimization on, because I like to optimize my image whenever I can, or simply because I'm the creator of this package. So yeah. Anyway, I don't need it. So let's just thank you, but no thank you. And now we're going to do one thing in Pinia is that don't have mutations, because mutation in for Vuex is mainly for dev tools. So in Pinia, they remove the mutation to make it less complex and more straightforward. So now we only have getters, state, and action. So I'm just go ahead and do actions, and I'm going to do async fetch pizza, and so I'm going to this loading equal to, I'm going to try yep, constant response. I'm going to fetch. Why is my Copilot doesn't help me? Okay, and I'm going to nope, and I'm going to do this. And no, I'm just need to, I don't need even this one. I can just, this is what they call live coding. Let's say pizza, and that should be it. And now I can catch an arrow, but you need to catch an arrow whenever you can, even if you don't use it. And finally, I'm going to have this. Awesome. And because this is the dummy autocomplete by Copilot, I don't need it. I need my own Netlify function, functions, and pizza. Yep. Okay. And let's see what else. I need to have this one. Great. And I don't need this one because I already have it installed. And this should be pizza gallery because we already have the code set up here. So let's just change it to pizza gallery. And that's good. Now we go into the pizza, and instead of using the hard-coded here, we can just use store, use pizza store, and so on. But when we need to fetch the email, we need to fetch the pizza to the store when it's mounted the component. So we're going to do on mount, and then async. Yeah. And that's it. I hope it works. Let's go back to here. And now you can see our store have no pizza because it was not there. Why doesn't it show me anything? Oh no. Let me see. So on a pizza, store the pizza gallery on mount. Store fetch pizza. And let's just go to pizza store to make sure that pizza store. Oh, and I need to actually make sure that this one is imported proper. And let's try. Now working. Okay. Why doesn't it work? And image transformation resize 300, I think 300, and action async way fetch. Okay. So let's see. Maybe I need to refresh. Okay. Let's just debug it a moment. Windows store. Let's try again. Store. And now we're in pizza and we need to get the store dot pizza. It should work. And let's say pizza gallery. Oh, okay. So now I can see that I probably do something really wrong here. So items, why would it be? Should be like, oh, yeah, this is why when I think of pizza, I am tired. Now sure, yes. Okay, now that works. So you can see here on the pizza display correctly. But the card, we don't have anything. And when we are at the card, we don't have any add in here. So now let's go ahead and create the next store we have. It's called use card. So let's say if we use card, we create a simple use card.js. Okay, and similarly, we're going to do also use card. Obviously, define store. Store. And we're going to do ID. Yes. Again, I'm very lazy, so let's just let the Copilot handle it for me. And yep. Nope. Transformations. And resize winner, and so on. Thank you. And this is it. And this should be it. And so on. Let's just make sure that this is not working well. Go and have a card total and card count. And go on. We do the actions. Again, we need to have three actions, add item. And we have also remove, but let's just add the remove. Oh, it's add for me. Yeah, because it's learned from my past practice. So, you see how it works. And you have clear card, remove, and add item. And what does this one? Screaming at me. It's screaming because, let's see what is screaming here. Oh, and you go on. Okay. And so on. Awesome. Now we need to go to the pizza and we need to replace the card here with our use card, which do like this. And that should work. And for that, we also add this card to the store just for the purpose of check-in. Okay, and let's go. So it should work. And now let's try. I just click on one of the card and let's say card, and then we go items. And then we can see here that we have an array of one thing and add to cart again. So we can see here that The array is, the quantity is 2. Now we need to display up here. So let's go to the header card count, and also we replace with use card, and so on. Oh. And this is that. You can see it's update automatically. But when you go inside, there's no item because we haven't added into the item yet. So let's go to your card. And since we already have everything displayed, so this is the dummy things that I create just for the sake of the demo. And now just use card again, import it, and let's go away. We got it. Now let's say we can clear the card. Oh no. Now let's just add another one, and go here, and we can remove and so on. But now if we want to make the order, we don't have anything here, make payment. So let's go to the next one. We call it make plugin. So let's go to the make plugin, and we do make payment plugin.js. And this one, we're just going to make payment plugin, and so on. And if go on, I need to wrap it up. So yeah, let's just go like this. Sorry, I need to wrap it up, right? So one moment. I'll just finish with this. So I'll just go if options. 1 second. Let's just, for the sake of it, let's go to the T. I'll just copy the make payment here that I did just for the sake of the demo in case I ran out of time. So I just copy it, and this will make a payment. And then in the main, I will do Pinia use and make payment plugin, and that's it. Now, and options. So on. Okay, cool. Now let's add to it, and we are make payment. It works, and this is I added on the spot. Okay, cool. So that's it. We finished with that. So anything else that I haven't checked out? Yeah, a lot. We haven't checked out the patch, subscribe, and on action. These are the main things that I really found interesting, and you should definitely check out, especially on action and subscribe. Well, the next question is Pinia better than Vuex? Well, it all depends. But again, Pinia is very new to the market, so to the community. So it have a lot of things, room to develop, and it have a lot of things that it lack compared to Vuex. And in general, it's not meant to replace Vuex. It's meant for small and medium projects when you don't need Vuex, because Vuex is more for scalability in big complex projects. Modular is great, but modular, when it comes to a complex code base, you can easily enter a maze of maintenance with that. So think twice. And some resource for checking out, including my demo code we just did just now. And thank you.
Nice. So we had to use a couple of minutes because of debugging. So, and of course also because of my handover. So, but thank you, Maya. I don't know if I see some. Yeah, we should create some tutorial. There are not really some any question as I can see. So maybe I can just get just one. Maybe this was just one first question is that do I really need a state management tool? I think it was a bit almost at the beginning. Let's answer just this, and then it's Daniel's turn. Sorry, Daniel. Yeah.
Whoa. That
Yeah,
was
Maya.
the like
Yeah. Have you heard the question? Maybe not.
No. Oh, I have a question.
No. I mean, I read a question at the beginning. Sorry, I read a question at the beginning. Like, do I need a state management or not?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, you depends on the scale of your project and the type of project also. Say if you do some kind like a landing website or very minimal website or applications that you don't need to commute between different components that is not parent children or an ancestor children, then you don't really need state management. State management is meant for something that bigger, like state management library meant for something that bigger. Well, if you need to control your loading state or arrow state, yeah, you should check out X state.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Maya. This has been great. Thank you also for debugging this online. So now let's get fast and let's invite Daniel on stage. Bye-bye, Maya. Bye-bye. Daniel, I'm sorry. It's all my fault because it's my very first turn as a host. So please forgive me. Daniel is a Nuxt.js is in the Nuxt.js core team, but I've seen that he is also as a jurisprudence from Oxford University and also theological and pastoral studies from Oak Hill College. Have I digged in the right Daniel or not? Please introduce yourself and then let's get started. I don't want to steal too much time.
No, you're right. I didn't expect those degrees to pop out, but absolutely, that's me. My route into doing what I'm doing now is maybe not the most traditional one. Like Ben, this wasn't where I started, but it's certainly one I'm enjoying being in at the moment. As you say, I'm on the Nuxt core team, and sorry. You might have had another question. I don't want to just talk over you.
No. I just wanted to just introduce you. Have you already shared your screen? Can I share? Oh, this is nice. So Ben, Daniel, sorry, I let you talk. Okay, so I let you start with the talk. Okay.
Bro.
Perfect.
Oh, it's been such a privilege. I've really enjoyed the talks so far. So, I mean, Ben was inspiring, and Maya, goodness me, looking at the speed of her live coding was a challenge all of its own. I hope to live up to that. I want to talk about optimizing developer experience with Nuxt 3. It's something that's dear to my heart. Before I was working at Nuxt.js and able to spend my time full-time on open source, I was a CTO for a tech startup. And we used Nuxt. There was a product that fit our needs, made our lives easier and happier. And so I really get the idea of developer experience when it comes to an open source framework. So that's my perspective. That's why I care about it. But a little bit more about me, perhaps. So as I said, I'm Daniel. That doesn't convey a great deal. This is my view. So most of the time, if you are chatting to me on Twitter or Discord, I'll be sitting here. I'll have a cat on my desk. I have 3, and possibly on my lap or on my keyboard, completely preventing any ability to do anything other than pet and maybe read something. And I'll definitely have a cup of coffee or tea in my hand. I've got one this evening. It's evening where I am, which is in the northeast of England. So frosty weather at the moment. As I start thinking about what we've done to optimize developer experience in Nuxt, I want to start with a question for you. And that is, when have you felt most productive? So imagine for a moment, you could be in any different stage of your journey and career, but when have you felt most productive? When was it that you thought, this is amazing? I love what I'm doing. I am a superhero. I am a magician. Whatever I want to make happen, I can make happen. And the more I thought about it, the more I think there are 2 axes that matter when it comes to being productive, when it comes to thinking about a good developer experience. And I think they're creativity and constraint. So it's the opportunity to do something amazing. So I always think of programming or application or web development as it's like magic. You can make something happen. And that's the creativity side of things. The more there is, more scope there is for doing something cool and fun, the better my experience, the less I'll feel held back. And then that's the other side of it, the constraint. Because And leaving aside for a moment that the concept of application requirements, things that are requirements that will constrain what you do, the kind of constraint I'm thinking about is more of a burden. Configuring your build environment, or figuring out how to import the function that you need, or something like that. The kind of thing that's busy work. It feels like investing in it or spending time in this doesn't actually get you anywhere towards what you're trying to do, which is build something amazing. And so I think when you have a minimum of constraint and a maximum of creativity, that is where you'll have the best developer experience, at least from a build tool point of view. Probably much more important is there'll be lots of other things, including how you feel you're treated in your team, whether you feel valued, your own home situation, your office environment. There'll be lots and lots of other things. And I do highly recommend, look up an article by Sarah Drasner on flow state. It's really well worth reading. And there are lots of other people who might say something about it. But for now, thinking about what I can do, working on Nuxt to make your developer experience better, I think provide an optimum capacity for creativity with a minimum requirement of constraint. So if you're not familiar with Nuxt, let me disabuse you of that straight away. So Nuxt 2 has been around for a while, well, and before it, Nuxt 1. And the kinds of things that people would know about Nuxt 2 are that we are a progressive framework. It's a JavaScript framework built on top of Vue. And the aim is that it is super simple to start. You can build a site straight out of the box without having to worry about any complex configurations, best practices built in. But the more you need to configure, the more you can. So some of the things that Nuxt 2 brought to the table, there's a pages directory, for example. Every Vue single file component you stick in there becomes a root in your app. So an about.vue page becomes /about. It configures PostCSS and Webpack and lots more besides. There's easier way of integrating with other Vue libraries through a plugin system. It's server-side rendered out of the box with support for static sites and hosting on static hosting, and lots more besides. I think probably the one that's maybe most important in that list, though, is the modules ecosystem that basically provides a way of extending Nuxt and adding functionality and features to it. So if you visit modules.nuxtjs.org, you'll see a list of hundreds of modules that others have added to Nuxt, which basically expand its capacity. So Nuxt is a community endeavor from lots and lots of people. So when it comes to Nuxt 3, I want to highlight 6 areas in which I think we have improved developer experience. At least we're trying to improve developer experience, and give you some examples in terms of code, in terms of what that looks and feels like. So just to start off with, let's talk about some of the new tech. And some of these we'll rush through pretty quickly. So from a tech point of view, we ship in Nuxt 3 with support for Vite and Webpack 5, both of which are phenomenally fast when it comes to building and bundling an app. Vite has a different philosophy for what you might do when you bundle, and particularly what you might do in development mode, how you resolve and transform the dependencies of your application. And that enables incredibly fast development. It feels amazing when you get started with a Vite project. And Webpack 5 is also really fast. It has some interesting experiments, including lazy compilation, which is a different approach to Vite, but equally really a fast dev environment. We also bring support for things like WebAssembly, Dino, workers as compile time targets. So when you build your Nuxt application, it can run in these new environments and run this kind of code. And one of the biggest changes from Nuxt 2 is that we support native ES modules in Node.js. That's one of the biggest causes of frustration if you're diving into Nuxt 3 beta, but it's also one of the things that's going to mean we're future-proof and able to create applications that last long into the future. One of the things that we also do is that we come with TypeScript built in. So in a new Nuxt 3 project, we've done a great deal to provide what we can via TypeScript in terms of hints and editor awareness of what Nuxt provides. And that also means we can guarantee type safety at build time. And it hugely improves the developer experience. Let me just show you how you would get started, by the way, with the Nuxt project just as we kick off. So we have a new Nuxt CLI called Nuxi. And it's really easy to get started. You just run an init command, and your Nuxt project is ready to go. So if we were to jump into this Nuxt 3 app, we need to do a couple of things in the background. We need to install our dependencies and start our dev server. Nuxt 3 is incredibly minimal out of the box. It's just that tsconfig that I was talking there, a package JSON, and Nuxt config and your app.vue, which is your entry point. The benefit of doing things in this way, providing a tsconfig, is that we're able to customize all of the features of your editor. So this is a generated file, Nuxt tsconfig, which means that as you code, we're able to change the TypeScript environment so that your editor knows, for example, what components you yourself have added to your project, what plugins you've injected, what middleware you've made available, what layouts are available to your application, and so on. And it means that when we're coming to think about integrations for editors, it doesn't matter which one you're using. Let me give you an example. If I were to create a new component, let's call it test component, and we'll just make it a super simple component. Hello. Actually, we'll give it maybe a prop. We will use the new Nuxt, the new Vue 3 syntax to define a prop. We'll call it demo title, and we'll make it a string. And yeah, there we go. Now, if we go back to our app.vue file here, we will actually be able to see that our test component is already recognized by our dev environment. And what's more, it actually knows its prop. So here, if we just want to give our demo title, say, a number, our dev environment is going to say, actually, it should be a string. This kind of thing, when I talk about TypeScript built in, is a way which hopefully makes your developer experience so much better. So hopefully your project becomes self-documenting. You don't need to search through making sure that you're not seeing any runtime errors in your browser console when you're going, because you actually see it right there in your app.vue file as you're going. This is wrong. You should, in fact, pass a string, and all will be well. There's all kinds of other things that I could talk about, and I will in a moment. But basically, because we have TypeScript built in, we can do a huge amount. And if you do have any questions about this, I'm happy to answer them as well at the end in terms of how we implement this. What are some of the challenges that we bring to the table? Second, Nuxt 3 brings a completely different server experience. So Nuxt 2 was a runtime environment. There was a minimal version of Nuxt that could start your server in production with a minimum of dependencies, so it wouldn't require Webpack and PostCSS and things like that. But Nuxt 3 actually comes with nothing. If you were to look at the project, Nuxt 3 is actually in dev dependencies, not in dependencies at all, because when you build your project, you produce a directory which can be copied anywhere, out of your project folder even, and all you need to do to start that project is run this entry point file with Node. So it's ultra minimal. It has automatic data and error handling. So if you have been struggling with the Node request response objects, for example, struggle no more. This is what a server middleware looks like in in Nuxt Nitro, the new server rendering framework. All you need to do is directly return whatever you want to return. So you can return an object or a value. So we'll say foo is bar and test is 42, something like that. And if we were then to make a request to this root, oh, I should say API. This API folder is magic and automatically gets registered in your Nuxt app. If we were to make a request, you see there we go, beautiful JSON. Everything is returned really nicely. And there's more. Because we have this direct return paradigm, we can actually give you the ability to know what this is like in the view portion of your app, to know the shape of what's coming back. So say here you are in the view portion of your app, and we have your script, and this is going to be an async script setup. It's one of the new features supported by Vue 3 and Nuxt has a couple of nice features built on top of that. So we might want, for example, to fetch that API endpoint. So I want to mention two things. First is we have this lovely feature called an isomorphic fetch. So on your client side, this isomorphic fetch will perform a network request to your server, wherever it is, whatever the base, whatever the endpoint is, it will make a network request. But on the server, you don't want to make a network request. Ideally, you just want to run the code directly. And so we're able to do that using this isomorphic fetch. We can say fetch api.test /test. Do you see what the IDE is telling me right now? It's telling me that the type of that response is going to be foo string test number. That's pretty cool, don't you think? That means that just by defining the root in my app, I have type safety when it comes to using the data that comes from that root, which is hopefully a developer experience that will make life a lot simpler and a lot better. This is how the server works. We effectively have an ultra-minimal orchestrator powered by something called H3. H3 is a new tiny HTTP server in the Untitled organization at GitHub. A lot of our innovations, as much as we have had them, we've released to the public under this Untitled GitHub organization. So anyone can benefit from, contribute to, use them in any project, not just Nuxt related. It's a unified JavaScript project, so it will work anywhere, not just in Node, but in the browser and workers, whatever. And H3 serves as an orchestrator. So if you request that API route, it can return the response. If you need to render a page, it will lazily load the Vue renderer. And the API routes are also lazily loaded, I should say. And it can even serve static files if you need to. I would always recommend serving those from a CDN if you can. And this isomorphic fetch, the $ fetch, is a way of accessing from one part of the app, from one route, another route, and just running the function instead of making a network request. There's so much more to say, and I wish I could tell you more about Nitro, but it's really cool and I love it. It does mean that a deployment is simple and as zero config as possible, which is another way we're trying to bring, we're trying to improve developer experience. So out of the box, Netlify and Versal are completely zero config. Azure Static Web Apps has a tiny amount of config, and Cloudflare Workers, again, just a config file you can copy paste from the Nuxt website. And it means you can build and deploy an app to any of these environments without actually necessarily needing to make any changes yourself in your project. You write the same code and it works in these vastly different environments. What's more, the performance is amazing. So we've designed Nitro for cold starts. So you get something like a 3 millisecond cold start out of the box. And that's with logging. But it can be even faster. And obviously a real world application there'll be a little bit more going on. But it's hugely faster, something like 150 to 170 times faster than a Nuxt 2 server. Again, I'd love to tell you more about that. But here's another area in which we've been able to improve developer experience from a Nuxt point of view with our documentation. So just as we've done just as we've tried as much as possible to make TypeScript do the work for us, we've tried to do the same with our docs. So that Nuxt config file that is pretty much the start of any Nuxt application. What we do with the options passed into there is we normalize them. We use them in multiple places. So, for example, if you have a custom directory, we use it in lots of bits of the code that Nuxt is running under the hood. So lots of things happen to this config. Well, we've actually written a schema builder called Untyped, which lets us define that schema using this object syntax. So we can have a resolver which can combine with other values throughout your config to get the resolved value. So that will have a default, perhaps. It will allow overriding. It might merge the defaults with that overridden value, etc. And by adding JSDoc documentation there, we actually then are able to extract that and use it for the real documentation for the Nuxt website. So if you were to go to the Nuxt website now, click on the docs and have a look at our config documentation, this is purely generated from the code of the application. So all of these code examples, the default values, they're guaranteed up to date because they come from the actual code that the current version of Nuxt is running, which hopefully will improve your experience. But it also means that when you're actually typing in your config file, you can access this documentation. So, for example, if we want to see the compiler options, should see I'm not sure why nothing is coming through here. I may need to set TypeScript strict. Basically, what we've done is we have, maybe that I've just disabled this in my Zen mode production. Anyway, I'm going to skip over this. If you are using this in your own project, you will see documentation when you hover over the keys in your Nuxt config. And finally, we support auto imports all the way through your application. So just as you've seen components auto import, we also support auto import for common helpers, like, for example, ref, which is a Vue utility, or computed, or any number of other things. So you get full type support for that. You'll know that A is going to be a string, for example, because that's how it's been defined here. Or it could be a number, of course, if you define it differently. You can add your own by just creating a composables directory and dropping some functions there. They'll be recognized globally in exactly the same way. You can create a plugins file and automatically expose global properties on your application. So you could have a Nuxt plugin, for example, that returns an object with a provide key, and it's going to be super simple because I'm running out of time. But if we were then to access that in the app, you would be able to see it's, again, fully defined. So if we wanted to access that test value, you'd see that it's available, and TypeScript is even telling us the exact value it's going to return, which is pretty cool. So everything is as minimal as possible, meaning that there should be as few constraints as necessary to get you working on your project. And hopefully all of this kind of thing, all of this documentation that's being provided in your editor by TypeScript means that your life as a developer is better. If you're interested, we'll check out the docs on nuxtjs.org or v3.nuxtjs.org for the new version. Follow us on Twitter and me too. and join Discord. If you've got any questions, there's a huge community of really nice people who would be absolutely delighted to help out. And please ask me questions in a moment, because I would love an excuse to show you some more cool things that we have going on. But I think that's probably pretty much my time up. Sorry, Francesco, for going on and on. I really could talk about this all evening.
You have been perfect. The fault it's always it's all mine that I wanted to do this handover, and but I need to synchronize a bit with the time. But I enjoyed these people. If you have any question, you can drop these in the chat. I've seen people very active. Also, they've been a bit, let's say, fighting, let's say, in a polite way between Svelte and Nuxt. I think there are many differences. I don't know if you want to say something in this. Setups looks cool. I don't. Maybe there was a question, but just this one. Was the cost for migration a Nuxt module from Nuxt 2 to Nuxt 3 with backwards compatibility?
So the great thing is a Nuxt 2 module will work straight out of the box in Nuxt 3. So we add a compatibility layer that supports all of the same utilities that you might have been using as a Nuxt module author in Nuxt 2. We also have a new module utility package called Nuxt Kit. Think of it like an SDK for Nuxt, which means that modules written using that will be compatible with future versions of Nuxt. Now, there are changes between Nuxt 2 and Nuxt 3. There are actually changes between Vue 2 and Vue 3. That means there might be things you have to adjust and change. You'll also be struggling if you're a module author right now, because we haven't publicly announced our new way of building modules for Nuxt 3, which makes a lot of the chores that you might have experienced, including typing, resolving options, providing information to your modules, which makes a lot of those things go away. So I would love to tell you all about that. But there is more coming. There's a guide coming that will explain a little bit about what that module builder does and how it works, and what best practices are for building modules with Nuxt 3. But the aim is that it should be very minimal in terms of the move from Nuxt 2 to Nuxt 3. The only major changes are the kinds of changes in Nuxt itself. So Nuxt 3, because it's not runtime, if you're reliant on hooks into your runtime server, you might have to change how your module works. Or you might have to wait for NitroPack, which is coming with some cool features with regard to runtime Nitro plugins. Or you might have to update things for Vue 3.
Perfect. Last question, Daniel. Then I let you go. We are 10 minutes late, but it's okay. How do you do the TypeScript fetch dark magic?
So my own conviction is that TypeScript is best when it's in the background. So when it helps make your life better. The more you have to manually say as string or pass the type of what you're expecting, the more opportunities there are for you to lose type safety, because you're actually overriding what the language is inferring naturally. So we want to infer as much as we can from the source material. So the way we do the dark magic with the server roots is that when we detect the server root is created, we add an entry to a declaration file in that .nuxt build folder. And we say the return type of that function in that folder, that API test, is going to be the type that matches up to this string API test. And that's all we do. We let TypeScript then monitor that file for changes. So as you change the type, TypeScript is now taken over that. We're not writing the type manually or anything like that. We've just hooked up TypeScript to that file. And then when we perform the isomorphic fetch, that $fetch, we specify that it should infer the path. So if it matches API test, then it provides that return type. Otherwise, it just returns an unknown, which is probably the best thing. You have to handle that yourself. I'm sorry, that was a little conceptual. I wish I could show you.
Nice. No. You explained in the best way, possible way. But yes, it basically sets a reference to the types in $fetch.
You can add your own, by the way. All of this is fully extensible. So if you're writing a library or you need to interact with the TypeScript environment of the user, you can create a Nuxt hook. You just register it. Nuxt will call it for you. And will let you modify references that are added to that declaration file. Anything, by the way, in any module that's used gets added automatically, so you don't have to think about that. In a Nuxt 2, you might have struggled because $Axios wasn't registered or something like that. No, it's all done for you. Lots of really nice developer experience features.
Nice, Daniel. So I think we are done. There are a lot of compliments, of course, to the talk. I really like your way of talking. It's very, it's super nice. Perfect. So nice. So Daniel, sorry, but I have to kick you out. I'm joking, but I hope that maybe we will collaborate again in the future. Okay, now I have two choices. Okay, so now I have two choices. Close this talk alone and just get all the power, or invite my friend Ido. I'll go with the second choice without a poll because we don't have time. Ido, I'm sorry.
Francesco.
Don't fire me. We are 10 minutes late, 11 minutes late. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It was great. Great kickstart to 2022, and I'm glad we did the switch. You were perfect.
Nice. So I just want to tell you a couple of good news. The first news is that we reached 100 of likes in this stream, which is I think a good result. We are also close to 5,000 members on the Meetup group. So we are very, very close. Maybe tomorrow we will reach this, or in a couple of days. And the last thing that I'd like to do is to say that we are getting topics every month, and the next month will be about Web3. We already have some amazing guests. We can't disclose this, but we will try to leak some news during the upcoming weeks. So Ido, I'm done, and I really, really enjoyed all the three talks. Really amazing speakers, amazing choice. Thank you so much also for this opportunity to do this, let's say, together, or me, or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco, and thank you everyone for tuning in. See you next month on Web3.
Perfect. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.